drinking water have been made at the two ends. There is a first aid center at the main entrance. There is also an ambulance with a doctor at the west gate. We hope it won't be necessary, but if at all, the bill will be sent to the Finance Ministry. Mr. Palkhiwala will be addressing public meetings in a number of other cities. These are all public meetings. You may inform your friends, relations and business contacts. Madras on 5th Saturday, Bangalore on Sunday the 6th morning, New Delhi on Monday the 7th evening, Calcutta on Thursday the 10th evening, Pune on Saturday the 12th, and on the finance bill next Tuesday the 8th on the East Lawn. The public is invited. He will also be inaugurating a one-day session analyzing the finance bill. There will be a panel of experts. You can get particulars from the Forum of Free Enterprise. This is on 14th. There have been many requests for audio and video cassettes. So those of you who are interested in getting them, for showing them to the service organizations and educational institutions and personal use, can contact the Forum office. They will be available at cost price. There have been many requests for Mr. Palkhiwala's previous writings which are out of stock. Most of them have been brought together in a book under the title We the People, which is now in the 6th edition. This is published as with all his other public writings on a no royalty basis. Copies are available at 3 points today. Then while you leave, please don't rush at the same time, because this huge crowd has come over a period of about 2 hours. So don't try to go out in 5 minutes. You can go to the west gate or the main entrance or to the east lawns. If there is any inconvenience, in spite of all our best efforts, I apologize to you on behalf of the forum and welcome your suggestions to improve our meetings next year and year after and for many years to come. Thank you.
Speaker, Mr. President, Mr. Nana Chudasama, distinguished guests, on behalf of the Cricket Club of India and the Freedom of Free Enterprise, and myself also, I welcome you all with a wonderful gathering that has come. The speech on budget is an event in itself. In all countries today, more so in developing countries. And who could tell us more and well than our speaker, Nani Palkhiwala? Give him a good hand. He is one of the most leading constitutional lawyers, not only of India, but even of Europe. I had an occasion to hear him with not that gathering today, but a very large gathering at Zurich a few years ago. And I have heard him also in many other European countries. His knowledge of taxation, his ability, his sincerity, and above all, as a lawyer I know, his clarity of expression is unique, and it's an education to hear him. Our country has an ancient history golden age. And probably so because it was an agricultural country, leading agriculture at the time. Probably because the people were not as many as today. But even so, we have an ambition to go ahead and again gain the prominence which we originally had. And although budget is an important social and political event, but it requires special knowledge of the country to do justice to this topic. Our speaker, as I said, has given so much time to the service of the nation. I thank him. I welcome him heartily to speak to you, as we are all anxious to hear him. Perhaps you do not know, I know well, how many lakhs of people, not only thousands which we have gathered, but how many lakhs of people are anxious to read his speech tomorrow in the paper. Probably some will like to hear him on video, see him and hear him. Some will probably hear him on cassette. But as I said, it's an education to hear him, and welcome again. This is an important event for the club, forum, and all of us in the interest of the nation. Our Mr. Nana Chudasama has kindly consented to preside. I have known him as a crusader. Crusader for what? For the poor people and middle class. I am very happy that so many, I see few members of the judiciary, I see few members of the diplomatic corps, I see industrialists, I see businessmen. Above all, I see students have gathered to hear him. Our president is a crusader, and he will give you his idea also of a budget for a poor man in this country. And I welcome him. He, as you know,
Wala, Mr. Hochan Advani, Mr. M.R. Pai, intelligent, disciplined, silent people of Bombay. When the the budget was declared by Mr. Tiwari, the thought came to the mind that this may be a good opportunity for many Bombayites to take up to agriculture and go to rural area. This is the only way perhaps we can remove the congestion of this city. It's the thought. Maybe in few days you may apply your minds. If you don't apply your mind for yourself at least, suggest this to your neighbors. As far as Forum is concerned, they've been doing a commendable work in this city and throughout the country. It is something which is very rare in any part of the world, such organizations doing such excellent work. But then there is always few dedicated men who run this organization, and I personally think that Forum is very lucky to have people like M.R. Pai and Mr. Divakara. According to me, they are one of the most dedicated and sincere people running this organization. As far as this evening's speaker is concerned, Mr. Nani Palkhiwala, it would be futile for me to keep on speaking the same thing what other presidents spoke for last 20 or 25 times at the same place. But as far as I am concerned, I consider him a completely different individual. He is one man whom I have studied, observed and seen for last 2 decades. And I find that it is very wrong for us to just call him a good jurist or an excellent economist, because he is much more than that. When this crowd you see, it's an indication, it's a great tribute to him, because this is a crowd which has not come in hired trucks. Usually the crowd which comes in hired trucks is like Columbus going to find a country, not knowing where he is gone, for what he is gone, and why he is gone. But anyway, this is not only the thing. What I was trying to speak about Nani is that he is a different kind of a human being. He is a person who has devoted a tremendous time, energy to not only the economic field but on various fields. And if I were to rank him, what would I call him? I would call him a legend in his own living time. We are some of those fortunate individuals living now, because if we were to work it out, I would say that in our era, in our lifetime, there will be 2 or 3 individuals who will shine out as those who were somebody who did so much for humanity, maybe in different walks of life. And immediately the 2 names that come to my mind is Mother Teresa and Nani Palkhiwala. His feelings, his desire to do. And he comes here and talks to you and explains. But if you all recollect when I said that disciplined, intelligent, but silent people of Bombay, I have always felt that in a democracy, the greatest crime people do is be a silent observer. Here this man comes and speaks to you and explains to you. But what happens after that? I think it is important that people of India realize to become vocal and start speaking out so that somebody hears it, because the people's voice is the greatest strength of democracy. And I think that works. Please try it out from this year onwards so that his mission gets a momentous and gets a great support. Concerned, I find that we have one thing in common, that is our first name happens to be 4-letter word. 3 letters are common. Is that last letter makes the difference. But he is a tremendous man, and I am very glad to associate with him always, and I think the people of India must say they will always be with him and become little more vocal so that democracy will have more strength. Talking about the budget, main talk is his. I have only few observations. One is that I think again people must become vocal to this new gimmick which government does. Just on the eve of budget, they go and pass an order and hike up prices of various commodities. I think this is absolutely unethical. This is ruining the principles of the budgetary system which we have adopted. They constantly keep on saying, and then comes the people in the parliament and keep on giving you such a pleasant talk as if they are most concerned about the common man, and they have already fixed him 15 days before the budget, and on the budget day they feel that they can fool all the people all the time. And I wish this can be stopped, and that can only be stopped by the people of India, that they must take budget as a one identity. Second thing which I find, that they have failed miserably in not giving enough importance to family planning. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are all students of economics, if you all believe in the prosperity of the country, a country where 50,000 babies are added a day, how can government be silent and not be bothered about this family planning? I think the allocation should have been far more. I personally think that allocation, you should get the same allocation as the defense budget, because then only this country has a hope, or the world has a hope. I think this is one aspect which I cannot understand, why politicians are feeling shy of them. I am told that most of them themselves at home don't believe in family planning. Maybe that's why it's difficult to preach what they themselves don't practice. But this is the second aspect. And the third aspect was that the government expenditure, they keep on saying we are going to control it. Please understand, when I'm talking about government expenditure, I'm not talking about holiday expenses. We will not talk about that. But I'm talking in general expenditure. In this country, we have never bothered to worry about bringing down the government expenditure. The amount of wasteful expenditure, if that can be done, it would be some kind of a good account the government can give to themselves. I could keep on speaking about it, but we have the main speaker. I have only one concrete suggestion to make to the rulers of this country that in a democracy, one thing is permitted, that when you are running a state, the head of the state has a right to induct few technocrats in his own cabinet and give portfolios which are suitable to them. You can't have a man deciding the educational policy of this country when he is an undergraduate of Allahabad University. How can you expect him to guide your educational system of this country? In the same manner, when you talk about economics, and I must make one observation, I am told that various schools lay a stress on various parts of the curriculum, but the Doon school does not have any stress on economics. In fact, they don't teach economics at all. Now, I am trying to explain is that this is the kind of a thinking. So why should we not get experts into a field which he is most able for? And I would suggest to our beloved Prime Minister, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, that from next year onwards, if he wants his economy to shape up so well that he can will not only next election but 10 next election, he should perhaps take an eminent person like Nani Palkhiwala as the finance minister of this country. In case he accepts my suggestion, ladies and gentlemen, very shortly, next year onwards perhaps, we will be coming to listen to Nani Palkhiwala not as an analyst of the budget, but to tell us what the budget is. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me a great pleasure. It's a pleasure for me to be associated with it. We are always with the forum, and with this, I would only say that as long as forum lasts, democracy will last, and as long there is democracy, our faith in democracy will go up, as long as people like Nani Palkhiwala are there. So I give you Nani Palkhiwala.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am most grateful to the first two speakers for their most generous words about me. Mr. Nana Chudasama has made some concrete suggestions, which I would certainly agree with, except one. And the suggestions he has made about family planning and the type of caliber we want in the cabinet are really worthwhile, excluding, as I said, just one suggestion. This is the 41st budget of Free India. And perhaps you would not be averse to spending, say, about 5 minutes looking at what we have done over the 40 budgets which have been relegated to history. What has been the sum total of them? How far has this nation progressed? I would like the facts to be known and publicly known, because I am afraid if you read the budget speech, you have a totally different idea from what the reality is. India became free in 1947. We had tremendous advantages. We had, thanks to the accident of British rule, a unified nationality, a single head of state, a central government, a central judiciary, a common currency, and the whole country as one could look forward to a glorious future. About our civilization, Mr. Advani has told you how it goes back 5,000 years. The concepts of eternity, infinity were evolved in this country. But go back only to the year, say, 5th century to the 14th century, when the Dark Ages brooded over the whole of Europe. This country had at that time its golden age. The Arabic numerals were conceived here. Afterwards they were taken by the Arabs, so that's why they are called Arabic. But all scholars are agreed that the root, the birth of the Arabic numerals was in India. We evolved the concept of pi, the ratio between the diameter and the circumference of a circle, 3.1416. We evolved quadratic equations, square root, cube root. people wrote theses pointing out how the earth rotates on its axis and revolves around the earth. These were achievements because they came 1,000 years before Galileo was born, Kepler was born, Isaac Newton flourished in England. This was the caliber of this country. There was a creativity which we thought in 1947 would once again make this country what it was centuries before. In 1947, when we became a republic, we were soon followed by South Korea, which became a republic in 1948. Now, I would like you to just cast a glance at what South Korea has done and what India has done. And then you can decide for yourself whether we deserve to be complimented so heavily as we are complimented by our politicians on our wonderful progress, tremendous growth, etc. In fact, if you know the conditions in the outside world, it would bring tears to your eyes to consider what's the state of this country. People like Dr. Hiranandani, who have been to Pakistan recently, tell us that there are no beggars in Pakistan, there are no people who are homeless without clothes in Pakistan. In other words, the standard of living is undoubtedly higher. Their per capita income is $390 per annum. Ours is $270 per annum. That's about two-thirds of what it is there. South Korea had a war to deal with. The war, as you know, went on from 51 to 53. After 53, South Korea, which was the less rich part of the whole of Korea, North Korea was much more affluent, has multiplied its economy 30 times. That means the rate of growth of the economy is 3,000%. Our rate of growth in real terms, I'm talking of Korea also in real terms, so the comparison is even. Our rate of growth in real terms has been 71% in per capita income. Not the gross national product, but in per capita income, 71% of what it was in 1950. We are today the 17th poorest nation on earth. We used to be the 15th poorest, then we have come up 2 places. And this, to my mind, for a country of the intelligence, the enterprise of India, is a matter for absolute shame, not for any self-congratulations. But ignorance is so vast, and our poor people, trusting as they are, can be so easily fooled by politicians that they are made to believe that here is a country which, as a result of governmental policies, has made enormous progress. We have today 15% of the world's population, thanks to what Nana rightly called the dragging feet of the government in family planning. We have more than 15% of the world's population. And we have less than 1.5% of the world's income. Let me give you one other statistic. Come closer to our own times, 1965. We were still in 65, the second largest economy of a developing country, next only to China. At that time, Brazil and Mexico both had less than half the size of the Indian economy, less than half. Today, in 1987, their economies have far outstripped Indian economy. Do you think they are any cleverer, any more enterprising than Indians are? But it only shows you what the economic policy of the government can do to a nation's future. And when the finance minister says that our socialism is our own, we have not borrowed it from anybody, I totally believe him. I don't think there is a country in the world which would like to take the odium of having to say that yes, we imported our socialism to India and we are responsible for the consequences. And our socialism is again the only product which we can never export to any other country of the world, because nobody would touch it with a pair of tongs. This has been the result of years of socialism, and still I am sorry to find in the budget again a reference to our socialism, what damage it has done to this country's economy. It's all right for people like you and me, who are, by God's grace, reasonably well placed to live our happy lives, but look at the millions and millions who will never have a brighter tomorrow, so long as our obsession with socialism continues. The Economist said recently that socialism was born in Europe and it has almost died in Europe. There is not a country in the world today which follows the type of socialism which we do. Let me come straight to the budget. Is this budget one which deserves the encomiums which have been heaped upon it by some, or is it one which is not likely to promote the growth of our national economy? Well, let me just analyze a few provisions and you can judge for yourself. I would define this year's finance minister's effort as the presentation to the nation of a budget bouquet with a very few fresh flowers in front, but with a lot of cheap greenery at the back, sprayed with a soporific aroma, and with quite a few stinging nettles which are not discernible to the superficial observer. Let me look at the tiny fresh flowers which are there first. You have no increase in the basic rates of taxation. The surcharge continues, which to my mind is totally unjustified. They should have known that, and they did say they would continue it only for 1 year, but the general docility of this country is so great that every government knows it can impose its will on the people who will just take anything lying down. There is not that desire to fight, because we are far too much impressed by political power, not realizing what Mr. Chaudhasama said, that in a democracy the real power lies with the people. What do you think got the concessions for the farmers, except that unknown gentleman Mr. Tikayat and what he did in UP? What else is it responsible for? You have no idea of what your own power is, but the only thing is, luckily for the government, people do not know how significant, how important, how vital their own voice can be in the making of policies. Otherwise, we would never have these nonsensical policies that we are continuing to even today. So the surcharge continues, although what was said last year was that it was only for 1 year. Secondly, salaried employees under Section 16 have been given a small increase in their standard deduction. Thirdly, under 80L, dividend income is now entitled to a separate exemption of 3,000. It's also involved that even professional men are, some of them, not quite clear as to what the provisions mean. What the provisions mean is simply this. Up to now, you had 7,000 general exemption under 80L, 3,000 special exemption for unit trust, and 2,000 another exemption for National Savings Certificate, National Deposit Certificates. Now this 7 plus 3 plus 2 has become 7 plus 3 plus 3. So if you have a child at school, you would know what I'm talking about. It's 7 plus 3 plus 3. And all that it means is that if you already have a National Investment Certificate which has absorbed the 2,000 allowance, then the increase for you is only 1,000 and not 3,000. Most newspapers have not got it yet because, as I said, of the very convoluted, involved language in which the laws are cast. Next, you have the reliefs to farmers, with which for lack of time I shall not deal, and also for fear that I may be misunderstood. I will only say this, that if the reliefs really reach the target groups, it's all fine. But the real problem is, as I'll try to show a little later, will the reliefs reach the target groups, or will they get absorbed by the middlemen through whom the reliefs are to be administered? Mind you, it's not the Ramakrishna Mission, it's not the Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan, it's not the Mother Teresa's missionaries for charity who are going to do this job. It is politicians and middlemen engaged by the politicians who will be distributing the reliefs. And I'll try and show you how much of it really reaches the target groups. Finally, there are some reliefs in the budget in excise. Now here again, people perhaps do not have a clear idea of what is the size of the relief. On paper you are told so many items have had reduction in excise duty, etc. Let me take one example with which I am familiar, cement. The relief is 20 rupees per ton. Instead of 225 per ton, the excise now will be 205. Per bag, therefore the relief comes to 1 rupee because there are 20 bags in a ton. Now the market fluctuations of a price of 1 bag of cement ranges say from 62 to 68. Therefore 1 rupee is really meaningless because nobody is going to buy or sell one more cement bag because of the 1 rupee difference. This is point number one. I'm mentioning it because the finance speech says, the budget speech says that it is intended to encourage and promote housing. It won't promote even the repair of one wall. But really it is not 1 rupee that is the relief. The relief is really 4.25 paisa, as I'll presently show you. First of all, out of the 20 rupees, 10 rupees are taken back by the government by the 5% surcharge on basic excise. That comes to 10 rupees per ton. So out of the 20, which is stated to be the relief, 10 rupees is taken by the government as the surcharge. Then you are left with 10 rupees. Out of this 10, you have to pay the additional railway freight. You have to pay for the bags that you buy, the jute bags, on which there is 5% surcharge. In fact, there is a 5% surcharge on every excisable item. So we have calculated that in our case, it absorbs 5 rupees only to take care of the surcharge on the gunny bags and the other components which go to make cement. And mind you, this 5 rupees is only representing the surcharge, the new surcharge under the bill. So out of 20 rupees, 15 rupees are taken back by the government and we are left with 5 rupees. And therefore, for 1 bag of cement, it comes to 25 paisa. And in fact, the dealers tell me that nobody deals in paisa when it comes to buy a cement bag. So the relief is purely an optical illusion. Now I am leaving you to consider whether, and mind you, I am mentioning cement because it is the biggest single item of excise relief. If in the case of cement, this is the size of the relief, you can imagine what must be the situation regarding other commodities where the magnitude of the relief is lower than in the case of cement in terms of the amount indicated in the budget as having been foregone by the government. Let me come to the other side of the picture, the debit side of the balance sheet, because I have exhausted, you may not believe it, but I have fully exhausted all the plus points of the budget. What is on the debit side? First of all, the size of the national debt. And I must say I am almost alarmed when I see the perfectly self-confident manner in which politicians talk of the national indebtedness. I use the term national debt in the sense of comprising the totality of the liabilities of the government of India. A lot of confusion arises because many papers give you the national debt figure as representing what is narrowly and technically called the national debt. What is narrowly and technically called the national debt does not include the provident fund of millions of Indians which are lying with the government and which have to be paid to every person as he retires from his job. It does not include the small savings, which are your savings and mine, which the government has to repay you on the due date. But these are a part of the debt of the nation as much as any other. So I use the term national debt as a compendious term to denote the totality of the liabilities, admitted liabilities of the government of India. In the year 88-89, the national debt in this sense will total 224,000 crores of rupees. It's a mind-boggling figure. It is the largest figure mentioned in any of the budget papers. 224,000 crores of rupees. That is 2,24,000 crores of rupees is the indebtedness of the government. On that, the government will pay interest, which will come to 14,100 crores of rupees. Now, 14,100 crores of rupees is almost 1/3 of the non-planned revenue expenditure of the government of India next year. That means you are paying by way of interest charges 1/3 of your non-planned expenditure. It is proposed that the government would borrow 27,000 more crores in 88-89. That means half of the borrowing would go merely to pay the interest charges. Please consider the figures again and have it clearly in your mind. New borrowing, fresh borrowing, 27,000 crores, of which 14,100 crores will go only to pay the interest charges. The government of India is acting as a compulsive borrower, which is willing to borrow right and left and center at any cost, at any price, at any rate. Look at the Indira Vikas Patra. It is, as everyone knows, a black market bond. The Times of India, in the editorial written on 1st March, rightly referred to it as black market bonds. They are black market bonds. You are not asked your name, you are not asked your address, you cannot pay money by check, you have to pay in cash at a post office and take the bearer bond. Do you think it is the poor people of India who are subscribing for these bearer bonds? Or do you think it is the people with untaxed wealth who would like to put their money in a place safer than mere currency notes? And to them you pay the highest rate of interest the government of India has ever paid, or even today pays, 14.8% compound interest. Because the bond, Indira Vikas bond, will double in 5 years. It comes to 14.8% compound interest. It's the rate which is higher than the rate at which the private sector is able to borrow monies. In other words, the public at large have more confidence in good companies in the private sector than in the government of India. How can a government borrow at 14.8%? Just ask yourself the question, does it make any sense to you? 10 years, 20 years ago, did you ever hear of the government of India borrowing at that rate? Even after making allowances for the fluctuations in the rate of borrowing, this is a rate of borrowing which, if I may say so, is a disgrace to the government. It means you can't take money from the people at a lower rate, otherwise you wouldn't offer 14.8%. Mind you, before this budget, they had made the period 5.5 years for doubling. At that time, the interest came to 13.4. But finding that the response was not good enough, they have now again made it 14.8. This is one of the ways in which the interest charges get augmented and augmented. And I call it a case of the nation at risk. And why do I say the nation at risk? There are, luckily in our country, very outstanding civil servants who have intellectual integrity, who have professional pride, and who, though they are government servants, will do the right thing by the country. There are two such officers in the Reserve Bank of India. One of them is Mr. S.R.K. Rao, Dr. S.R.K. Rao. The other is Mr. A. Session. They wrote a paper recently, which I hope the Indian Merchants Chamber will circulate so widely that every intelligent citizen reads it. They point out that India is in the danger zone and may soon enter the debt trap. Now, what is the debt trap? The debt trap is a situation where you have to borrow more monies merely to pay the interest charges on your existing borrowing. It's like a company which has borrowed 10 crores, but is not able to pay the interest on 10 crores. So it borrows more and then pays the interest out of the fresh borrowings. If any company were conducted on the lines on which the government of India runs, it would have gone into liquidation long ago. It's only the inherent strength of the people, strength of this nation, which keeps such a policy functioning year after year. Now, the debt trap, therefore, is the situation where you have to borrow merely to pay interest charges. And, as the Reserve Bank officials point out, a stage is then reached when you are not able to borrow more with a view to pay the interest charges. So then you start printing currency notes, and then you pay the interest because people won't lend you any more money. Don't think this is a hypothetical situation. Great countries, at least as intelligent as India, frankly, in terms of real results, more intelligent than India, have come to grief precisely on this count. Take Germany, one of the most intelligent nations on earth and one of the most disciplined. They reached a situation after the Second World War when if you wanted to buy 1 pound of butter, you had to take a wheel cart, a wheelbarrow, put the currency notes there and take it there because you needed billions, literally billions of marks to buy 1 pound of butter. The inflation rate became 1,000,000% higher every week. So it was a mind-boggling situation. In fact, the government paper was worth nothing, and the government kept on printing more and more paper with a view to paying the wages, because how else could the people be paid? And people would run during the lunch interval to buy goods, because if they waited till the evening, the price would be higher. Take Israel, only 2 years ago, 1986, one of the most intelligent nations on earth. You can't easily fool a Jew in money matters. What was the situation Israel reached 2 years ago? Inflation of 200%. Why 200%? Because of the debt trap. The people were no longer willing to lend money to the government. The government started printing currency notes, and the inflation of 200%. It went to 300%. Now it has been brought under control. Therefore, other countries have gone through this. I won't multiply examples what happened in Argentina, Bolivia, Peru, etc. But number of countries have had this experience. And I am afraid this great confidence of our ministers that nothing will happen to this country is totally wrong. The Reserve Bank officials are right, and the finance minister is wrong, if I may say so with great respect to him, when he thinks that this is an imaginary evil. And Mr. A. Session points out that if we go on at the present rate, by the year 1992-93, that means in 4 years' time, our interest burden will be more than the fresh borrowings. In other words, we won't be able to borrow enough even to pay the interest charges. What is it if not a debt trap? This, to my mind, puts the nation at risk. And I think the people must know what the facts are. If you are here 4 years later and if the present policy continues, you will find that the Reserve Bank's prediction is right. I repeat, it's not as if the government is without competent advice. It has got all the talent available in the world in this country, all the knowledge, expertise. The only question is, are they willing to take advice? Economists will tell you how they were called by the finance ministry a short while ago. Number of them, prominent industrialists, prominent economists, I won't mention names. They went there, not one single suggestion has been accepted in the budget. That's why I have refused to write any piece for any newspaper to say what the budget should be like, because it's absolutely an exercise in futility. Nobody pays any attention here. It's a deaf government. They think that all the knowledge is concentrated in the North Bloc, and the rest of the country are ignoramuses who have nothing to contribute, nothing to suggest. It's the exact opposite of the system prevailing in mature democracies like the United States, Canada, UK, where professors, thinkers, economists have a very important role to play in the shaping and framing of the country's policy. Not so here. So the indebtedness is, to my mind, the greatest danger springing from this budget. I would put secondly, the wastage and the extravagance. The wastage and the extravagance of our government is beyond belief. The Economist said the other day that Pakistan is a rich country with a poor government, and India is a poor country with a rich government. This is very true. The way our government spends money, you would think it's one of the wealthiest governments in the world. Instead of using my own words, let me just use the words of very distinguished public officials who belong to the tribe I referred to earlier, of men of professional integrity, who will speak the truth irrespective of their personal promotion, personal advancement. Let me quote Professor K.N. Raj. He was a member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Prime Minister at that time was Mrs. Indira Gandhi. He wrote in 1984 that the poverty eradication programs which had been started in Mrs. Gandhi's time, he noted that they were becoming very popular, and I am quoting his exact words. The poverty eradication schemes have become a lucrative industry, giving the largest returns to the promoters. And the second sentence, after a few more words, the enthusiasm which the poverty eradication program has aroused is explained by this phenomenon. Now, so when you read in the papers that poverty is to be eradicated, please remember this sentence: the largest returns are to the promoters. And this is very true. It's not only Professor K.N. Raj. Everybody who has applied his mind to the problem has come to the same conclusion. Take Dr. Chalaya, Raja Chalaya, who is today a member of the Planning Commission, our present Planning Commission. He made the report on black money where he points out that one of the great sources of black money is the poverty eradication program. Because lots of large sums change hands untaxed. And the research workers whom he had engaged reported, and that's mentioned in the report, that between 50 and 80% of the poverty eradication programs never reach the target group. They are just swallowed illegally by people in charge of the program. I'm not saying it happens only in India. Government by definition is such an agency that unless the people are very alert, things will go wrong. Just as they will go wrong in a company where the top management is not alert. Mr. H.V.R. Iyengar, when he presided over my budget talk in the last year of his life, mentioned that his experience of 45 years in government had convinced him that at least 40% of the government expenditure goes down the drain.